actually a random camera that I had laying around, but I feel like it's important for you guys to know that I am reading from the Bible. So I want you guys to see it as well. Right? So where we left off last was First Kings 4, the start of First Kings 4. And Solomon just really, he flexed on us, okay? He flexed on us. Well, the Bible flexed on us, kind of, sort of. So before that, God said, okay, ask me for whatever you want. Solomon asked for wisdom. God said, okay, I will bless you with wisdom. And because you asked for that, which will inadvertently bless my people, I will then bless you with all these other things. And he also said, if you follow me, I will give you a long life. Right? So those were the promises that God gave to him. That's a good promise. Now, if you want a promise from anyone, it's a promise from God. Right? That's who you want to be making you a promise. So we're moving on now to chapter 4. Solomon's officials and governors. Let's get it cracking. Right, so chapter 4, verse 1. So King Solomon ruled over all Israel, and these were his chief officials. Before I start this, you guys have to show me grace, right? Because some of the names in the Bible, if you don't practice it beforehand, it's going to be tough. So I just may butcher some of these names. So all you guys who practice Hebrew, who went to school for theology, have mercy on me. Do not, that's all I'm going to say. Have mercy on me. I will butcher it probably. So correct me in the comment section. All right, there we go. So King Solomon ruled over all Israel, and these were his chief officials: Azariah, son of Zadok, the priest; Elihoreph and Ahijah, sons of Shisha, secretaries; Jehoshaphat, son of Ehulad, recorder; Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, commander-in-chief; Zadok and Abiathar, priests; Azariah, son of Nathan, in charge of the district governors; Zabud, son of Nathan, a priest and advisor to the king; Ahishar, palace administrator; Adoniram, son of Abda, in charge of forced labor. So these were his people, right? These are the people that he set up to help him. Solomon had 12 district governors over all Israel, who supplied provisions for the king and the royal household. Each one had to provide supplies for 1 month in the year. These are the names: Ben-Hur in the hill country of Ephraim; Ben-Decker in Makaz Shalbim; Beth-Shemesh and Elon Bethman; Ben-Hesed in Aruboth; Soko and all the land of Hepher were his; Ben-Abinadab, I know that name, and Naphoth Dor. He was married to Taphath, daughter of Solomon. Bainan, son of Ehulad, in Tanakh and Megiddo, and in all of Bethshan, next to Zarethan; below Jezreel, from Bethshan to Abel Meholah, across to Jechmeam; Ben-Geber in Ramoth Gilead; the settlements of Jair, son of Manasseh, in Gilead were his, as well as the region of Argob in Bashan, and its 60 large walled cities with bronze gate bars; Ahinadab, son of Iddo, in Mahanaim; Ahimaaz in Naphtali. He had married Basemath, daughter of Solomon; Baina, son of Hushai, in Asher and Eloth; Jehoshaphat, son of Peruah, in Issachar; Shimei, son of Elah, In Benjamin, Geber, son of Uri in Gilead, the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the country of Og, king of Bashan. He was the only governor over the district. Solomon's daily provisions. The people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They ate, they drank, and they were happy. That's a lot. Listen, I grew up in the Bahamas, right? The Bahamas has my heart. The Bahamas will forever be my home, no matter where I live. If you've ever spent some time on the beach, you know that it's almost impossible to count how many speckles or particles of sand is at the beach. This just said the people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. That's a lot. That gives you an idea of how many people belonged to Judah and Israel. Okay, moving on. And it also mentioned that they were happy. Keep in mind, the Bible doesn't mention things just because. So let's pay attention to the descriptive words that they use. It says that they ate, they drank, and they were happy. So these people were married. They were chilling. Didn't sound like they had much worries, right? Let's go. And Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. These countries brought tribute and were Solomon's subjects all his life. Solomon's daily provisions were 30 cores of the finest flour and 60 cores of meal. Let's see if they give any detail into what is cores. Okay, so 4 verse 22. Solomon's daily provisions for all his household, his palace servants, and his court officials and their families. Okay. So let's go back up there. So Solomon's daily provisions were 30 cores of the finest flour and cores of meal, not just for him, his family, all of his people. 10 head of stall-fed cattle, 20 of pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep and goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice of fowl. For he ruled over all the kingdoms west of the Euphrates River, from Tifsah to Gaza, and had peace on all sides. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel from Dan to Beersheba lived in safety, everyone under their own vine and under their own fig tree. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for chariot horses and 12,000 horses. This also lets you understand, like, when Solomon asked for wisdom, he was in a place where he had everything else. He already had everything. You see what I'm saying? He was king already. He had everything. He had rule. And he still humbled himself and asked for wisdom. It's something that wisdom, I would personally, my personal opinion, I think knowledge can be gained, but wisdom, I don't think wisdom can easily be gained by like knowledge can. For instance, I went to school for quite some time. I have a master's degree. I've gained knowledge over that period of time. So now I have knowledge, specified knowledge in business, right? With all those years of schooling I did, if I don't have wisdom, I could still be a fool that has knowledge. Right? You could still be a fool that has knowledge. But wisdom is something totally different. Let's look up the definition of wisdom real quick, y'all. Pause. We gonna do a deep dive right here, right? So, I think I stopped at around verse 27. Let's look up wisdom. But instead, we aren't gonna look up normal wisdom. I want you guys to see what I'm doing, right? So I'm looking up the biblical definition of wisdom. Let's look at the biblical definition of wisdom. Okay, so it's also important to know where you get your information from. Okay, so we're going to use the AI overview, right? So it says the Bible defines wisdom as the application of truth to specific situations for godly ends. It's the ability to identify the best goal in a situation and the best way to achieve it. Wisdom is also the practical side of moral goodness. Also says wisdom is the skill of applying knowledge rightly. In Hebrew, the word chokmah is used to describe a skilled artisan who excels at their craft. An attribute of God. Proverbs personifies wisdom as a woman who roams the earth, calling out to those who want to listen and learn. In Hebrew thought, wisdom is an attribute of God himself. Okay. I'm going to go with that definition. Wisdom is an attribute of God himself. I like that. So you see, you can have a PhD but still have no wisdom. Wisdom and knowledge, two different things. Solomon humbled himself to ask for wisdom, something that clearly is only given by God. I just love that. I just love that. I just had to touch on that. I know that was back in chapter 3, but I just had to touch on that. Let's get back to the word. Okay. Let's get back to listening about how good Solomon was living. Because clearly he was living a life of abundance. Him and all his family. As a matter of fact, all the people of Judah and Israel, they were living an amazing life. Okay, so chapter 4, verse 27. The district governors, each in his month, supplied provisions of King Solomon and all who came to the king's table. They saw to it that nothing was lacking. They also brought to the proper place their quotas of barley and straw for the chariot horses and the other horses. Okay. Now, verse 29 goes into Solomon's wisdom. This is the part I like. I love talking about this, right? Because I remember when I was younger, after reading this, I said, okay, I'm going to pray for wisdom. And for many years, even now, I still, almost every time I pray, dear God, please bless me with wisdom so that I can understand, so that I can see things that people may not see, not only to protect me, but to protect my family, right? I want to have insight. So I love the fact that the Bible not only touches on wisdom, touches on the wisdom that Solomon had, which arguably was the wisest man in the Bible, right? I don't even think it's an argument. You could try. You could try. But when God says, bro, I'm going to bless you with this, it's really no competition. Right? So let's move on. So 29. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. So here we are touching. They are touching. They went back to mention that because they mentioned that earlier. In verse 20, they said the people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. Now, they're comparing Solomon's wisdom to that of the seashore again. Numerous. Let me look at this. How many particles? How many particles of sand is on a seashore? Let's see what AI has. Let's see what AI says. According to estimates, there are roughly 5 sextillion grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth. Keep in mind, the Bible they were not specific on which seashore. So we could, one could almost say, well, are they talking in general? Did they mean the seashores of everything or just a specific seashore? They don't say. But it says, man, it says, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Even this AI generated response is inaccurate. Because they say 5 sextillion grains of sand on all the beaches of earth. There it is. It's right there. Let me put it on that one. It's right there. That's the definition. According to estimates, there's 5 sextillion grains of sand. Sextillion. Let me count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 zeros with a 5 in the front. Not even a 1. Can you guys see how like mind-blowing this is? When God blesses you with a gift, He is not talking about, okay, I'm going to just give you a little bit. This was an abundance. I want to look at you guys. This was an abundance. Mind-blowing. Let's move on. Okay, so 29. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan the Ezrahite. It's also funny that they're mentioning people by name. So these people were probably seen to be wise back in the day. The Bible has not changed in thousands of years. So the name drops here. For your name to be dropped in a book that has not changed in a long time, that should tell you how wise these people were. They were probably scholars. And the Bible is name dropping names at this point and saying Solomon was wiser than them. Let's continue. So Ethan, the Ezrahite, wiser. Wiser than Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahal. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. Why 5? I don't know. He spoke about plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He also spoke about animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. From all nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. It's not just Israelites. We talking about Egyptians. It said people of different nations. So Solomon, he was world known. People traveled. Back in the day, there was no cars. You had to hop on a donkey or a mule. You had to travel in packs. Says that Solomon's wisdom sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of this wisdom. He wasn't just sending one person. It wasn't sending one person to hear Solomon. They were sending thousands of people just to hear wisdom from this one man. When God blesses you, man. Okay. So the Bible that's the entire ending part of chapter 4. They just wanted you to understand, like, okay, this is how wise this man was. So let's move on to chapter 5. Preparations for building the temple. When Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon had been anointed king to succeed his father David, he sent his envoys to Solomon. Because he had always been on friendly terms with David, Solomon sent back his message on Hiram. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he could not build a temple for the name of the Lord his God, until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. One thing I noticed about Solomon, if you wasn't cool with his daddy, he ain't really fighting with you. But if you had loyalty to his dad, guess what? You are a friend of Solomon. You know how much people Solomon already killed just off the fact that they did his daddy wrong? I have one son. I want him to have that type of energy with me. I want my son to have that kind of energy. Don't kill people now. You know, don't kill people, but you guys know what I'm saying. Let's move on. So verse 4. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, and there is no adversary or disaster. I intend, okay, make sure I hit record. Whoo! I intend, therefore, to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David, when he said, your son, whom I will put on the throne in your place, will build the temple for my name. So give orders that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me. My men will work with yours, and I will pay you for your men whatever wages you set. You know that we have no one so skilled in felling timber as the Sidonians. No, so skilled in felling timber. All right, let's see what felling timber is. Let's see. Give me a second. Okay, so felling timber. Felling timber, also known as tree felling, is the process of cutting down and removing a tree. It's a part of logging, which is the organized cutting of trees for commercial profit. Okay, so it's just pretty much cutting down trees. Verse 7. Okay, verse 7. When Hiram heard Solomon's message, he was greatly pleased and said, praise be to the Lord today, for he has given David a wise son to rule over this great nation. So Hiram sent word to Solomon, I have received the message you sent me, and will do all you want in providing the cedar and juniper logs. My men will haul them down from Lebanon to the Mediterranean Sea, and I will float them as rafts by sea to the place you specify. There I will separate them, and you can take them away, and you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal house. In this way, Hiram kept Solomon supplied with all the cedar and juniper logs he wanted, and Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, in addition to 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil. Solomon continued to do this for Hiram, year after year. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom, just as he had promised. There were peaceful relations between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty. King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month. Wow. So that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Right. Solomon had 20,000 carriers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workers. At the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of high-grade stone to provide a foundation of dressed stone for the temple. The craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram and workers from the Byblos cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. Okay, so it looks like that right now Solomon's goal is to rebuild the temple. So he's setting up things in place so that this can be done. He's strategically setting up partnerships so that this can be done. Strategically. Let's move on. So Solomon builds the temple, chapter 6. In the 480 year after the Israelites came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. This man was getting ready to work in the 4th year of his reign. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. I'm going to put this up so you guys can see a depiction of what the temple looked like. Can you guys see that? This camera is like reversed, so that's how it looks. Actually, pause 1 second. I'm gonna turn on this light so we can have a bit more light here. I don't even know if that helped a lot. But you guys can see, right? So that's a depiction. So tough. Okay, so that's a depiction of what the temple looked like, right? Very beautiful. I can actually show you there, which you can see way better, right? You guys can see that's very beautiful. So you have the side rooms back there, the most holy place, then the holy place, two separate places, and then the portico. All right, get that set back up. Okay, so 30 high. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow windows high up in the temple walls against the walls of the main hall and inner sanctuary. He built a structure around the building in which there were side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. Do you guys understand how insane that is? Let me reread that. If you've ever been on a construction site, you understand that a construction site isn't the quietest place. Not even close. You will hear hammers, nails, jackhammers, tractors, any and all things. Nails dropping. If someone dropped like a nail out of their pocket or something, you will hear that. A construction site, that's where things are being built, put together. It's not quiet. It said, in building the temple, only blocks dressed and the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. Precision. The entrance to the lowest floor was on the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level, and from there to the third. So he built the temple and completed it, roofing it with beams and cedar planks. And he built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits, and they were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. The word of the Lord came to Solomon, as for this temple you were building, if you follow my decrees, observe my laws, and keep all my commands and obey them, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to David your father. And I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people, Israel. David is still being mentioned. He said, I will fulfill the promise that I gave your father to you. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. He lined its interior walls with cedar boards, paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling, and covered the floor of the temple with planks of juniper. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards, from floor to ceiling, to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, or the most holy place. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with gourds, and open flowers. Everything was cedar. No stone was to be seen. I think something is important here because I'm just reading this and I'm a visual learner. I showed you guys what the temple looked like, right? But let's look at this. How long is, so I'm typing, how long is 20 cubits? So a cubit is 30 feet. 20 cubits is 30 feet. Right? Let me make sure that's what we... The measurement... No, 60 cubits long, 20 wide. So 60 long, 20 wide. So let's go. Let's see how long this actually was, right? So 60 cubits long. 60 cubits is about 90 feet long. A cubit is a unit of measurement that is roughly 18 inches long. Here are some examples of measurements in cubit. The Temple of Solomon. The temple is 60 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. The image of King Nebuchadnezzar. The image was 60 cubits tall and 6 cubits wide. The height of Adam. According to the Prophet Muhammad, Adam was 60 cubits tall. So scholars estimate the biblical cubit to be 1.33 and 2.2 feet. So if we're talking about 2.2 feet, so they estimate one cubit to be 1.33 and 2.2 feet. So if we're talking about 60, 2.2 times 60, we're talking about 132 feet. 132 feet. 60 cubits. Estimated. Right. Phone is also about to die, but it's okay. Moving on. So he prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold. And he also overlaid the altar of cedar. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold. Pure gold, not the gold we have today. We ain't talking gold plated. Not silver or bronze with gold around it. We talking pure gold. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. No expense was spared here. For the inner sanctuary, he made a pair of cherubim out of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing 5 cubits. 10 cubits from wingtip to wingtip. The second cherub also measured 10 cubits, for the 2 cherubim were identical in size and shape. The height of each cherub was 10 cubits. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple, with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other cherub, the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. Okay, and so right here, this actually has photos of everything we're going to be talking about. The light is kind of bright, so trying to get to focus. So I just want you guys to kind of see what we're talking about here. Okay, so you could have an idea. So right there, number 1, the Ark of the Covenant. Number 2, we have the movable bronze basin. You're going to hear about that. Number 3, the incense altar. That's how that looked. And then number 4, we have the lampstand. Okay. Now we can move on. So, verse 29. On the walls all around the temple, in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer rooms of the temple with gold. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made doors out of olive wood that were 1/5 of the width of the sanctuary, and on the 2 olive wood doors he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. and overlaid the cherubim on palm trees with hammered gold. In the same way, for the entrance to the main hall, he made door frames out of olive wood that were 1/4 of the width of the hall. He also made 2 doors out of juniper wood, each having 2 leaves that turned in sockets. He carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them, and overlaid them with gold hammered evenly over the carvings. And he built the inner courtyard of 3 courses of dressed stone and 1 course of trimmed cedar. Could you imagine seeing this thing today? Like, just breathtaking. Gold. We talking about a room where the walls are gold. This place was huge. Solomon did his thing. He did his thing. He said, this is for my people to worship. This is a place of God. No expense will be spared. He did his thing. And now you see why God blessed him. Okay, so 7. Solomon built his palace. Let me hear. So we've heard what Solomon did with the place of God. Now let's see what Solomon created for himself. Keep in mind that I don't feel like anything that's put in the Bible was done here by chance. So all of the description of these places, they're here for a specific reason. It's not by chance, right? So let's move on. Chapter 7. 1 Kings chapter 7. That's where we're starting right now. And also, you guys, if you have your Bibles, please feel free to tune in. Like I mentioned before, I'm reading from the New International Version, right? Mostly because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not old school. I'm 30. And growing up, the hardest thing about reading the Bible was the thou and, just the old English. I'm not too much of a fan of that. Now, I do feel like it's important, right? But I just like to enjoy the reading, I'm already reading this. I don't want my mind to have to also go into breaking down, okay, thou. So I just like it to be in plain English, right? So that's why I decided the New International Version. There we go. But you could tune in with whatever version you want. You will still get the gist of what I'm talking about. It took Solomon 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. He built the palace of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, with 4 rows of cedar columns supporting trimmed cedar beams. This is a palace. It was roofed with cedar above the beams that rested on the columns. 45 beams, 15 to a row, and its windows were placed high in sets of 3, facing each other. All the doorways had rectangular frames. They were in the front part in sets of 3, facing each other. He made a colonnade 50 cubits long and 30 wide. Do you realize how large these structures are? We just learned in the past that they estimated that a cubit is between, I think it was like 1.3 to 2.2 feet? So we're talking like, he said he made a colonnade 50 cubits long and 30 wide. Whew. In front of it was a portico, and in front of that were pillars and an overhanging roof. He built the throne hall, the hall of justice where he was to judge, and he covered it with cedar from floor to ceiling, and the palace in which he was to live, set farther back, was similar in design. Solomon also made a palace like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. Right, that's important as well. All these structures from the outside to the great courtyard and from foundation to eaves were made of blocks of high-grade stone, cut to size and smoothed on their inner and outer faces. The foundations were laid with large stones of good quality, some measuring 10 cubits, and some 8. Above were high-grade stones cut to size, and cedar beams. The great courtyard was surrounded by a wall of 3 courses of dressed stone, and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams, as was the inner courtyard of the temple of the Lord with its portico. So the temple's furnishings, we're going to go into what was placed inside the temple. So first, we got the breakdown of what the temple looked like. So we have a visual. I showed you guys that earlier. And I also showed you guys the furnishings that were in the temple, right? Which I showed you. So now we're going to actually go into the details of the Ark of the Covenant, the movable bronze basin, the incense altar, the table for the bread of presence, and the lampstand. Okay. So King Solomon sent to Tyre, Tyre, not Tire, by the way, and brought Huram, whose mother was a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and whose father was from Tyre, and a skilled craftsman in bronze, the best of the best, right? Not just anybody. He is sending for people the best of the best. Huram was filled with wisdom. Okay. Let me finish read this and then we'll come back to this. Huram was filled with wisdom, with understanding, and with knowledge to do all kinds of bronze work. He came to King Solomon and did all the work assigned to him. Not only is Solomon building something that requires precision, right? The highest quality of work. He's also seeking people that also have wisdom. Nothing in the Bible is placed there by chance. It's not by chance that they use that descriptive word, wisdom, when mentioning Huram. That's like me building something. And I'm like, you know what? I could find someone here in America to help me build this. Nah, not good enough. I need to go and get someone in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, right? Or Egypt. Someone that is the best of their craft. Not only that, not only are they world renowned, right? But they are also seen as wise, just like I am, to come and build this. I need the best of the best. And even past being the best of the best, I need someone with wisdom as well to come and build this. So yeah, the best of the best, in short. So, verse 15. He cast 2 bronze pillars, each 18 cubits high and 12 cubits in circumference. He also made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the top of the pillars. We're at 43 minutes. So once we get closer to 50, that's when I stop my recording. A network of interwoven chains adorned the capitals on top of the pillars, 7 for each capital. He made pomegranate in 2 rows, encircling each network to decorate the capitals on top of the pillars. He did the same for each capital. The capitals on top of the pillars in the portico were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits high. On the capitals of both pillars, above the bowl-shaped part next to the network, were the 200 pomegranates in rows all around. He erected the pillars at the portico of the temple. The pillar to the south he named Jachin, and the one to the north Boaz. The capitals on top were in the shape of lilies, and so the work on the pillars were completed. Excuse me, guys. I need some water. Man, it's funny. I actually decided to fast today until tomorrow. So you know what tastes good? This water. Man, okay. So he made the sea of cast metal, circular in shape, measuring 10 cubits from rim to rim and 5 cubits high. It took a line of 30 cubits to measure around it. Below the rim, gourds encircled it, 10 to a cubit. The gourds were cast in 2 rows in one piece with the sea. The sea stood on 12 bulls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. The sea rested on top of them, and their hind quarters were toward the center. It was a handbreadth in thickness, and its rim was like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. He also made 10 movable stands of bronze. Each was 4 cubits long, 4 wide, and 3 high. This is how the stands were made. They had side panels attached to uprights. On the panels between the uprights were lions, bulls, and cherubim, and on the uprights as well. Above and below the lions and bulls were wreaths of hammered work. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles, and each had a basin resting on 4 supports, cast with wreaths on each side. On the inside of the stand there were an opening that had a circular frame 1 cubit deep. This opening was round, and with its basework it measured 1.5 cubits. Around its opening there was engraving. The panels of the stands were square, not round. The 4 wheels were under the panels, and the axles of the wheels were attached to the stand. The diameter of each wheel was 1.5 cubits. The wheels were made like chariot wheels. The axles, rims, spokes, and hubs were all cast metal. Each stand had 4 handles, one on each corner, projecting from the stand. At the top of the stand there were a circular band 1/2 cubit deep. The supports and panels were attached to the top of the stand. He engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees on the surfaces of the supports and on the panels, in every available space, with wreaths all around. Every available space. No expense was spared. That's all I'm going to say. This is the way he made the 10 stands. They were all cast in the same molds and were identical in shape. Keep in mind, this wasn't just anybody. We already established that this guy was world renowned. So you know this was, yeah. He then made 10 bronze basins, each holding 40 baths and measuring 4 cubits across, 1 basin to go on each of the 10 stands. He placed 5 of the stands on the south side of the temple and 5 on the north. He placed a sea on the south side and the southeast corner of the temple. He also made the pots and shovels and sprinkling bowls. So Huram finished all the work he had undertaken for King Solomon in the temple of the Lord. His work was done. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on the top of the pillars, the 2 sets of network decorating the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on the top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 sets of network, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network decorating the bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 10 stands with their 10 basins, the sea and the 12 bulls under it, the pots, shovels, and sprinkling bowls. All these objects that Huram made for King Solomon for the temple of the Lord were of burnished bronze, handmade. The king had them cast in clay molds in the plain of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all these things unweighed because they were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. They didn't even measure them. Again, no expense spared. The golden altar, the golden table on which was the bread of the presence, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right and 5 on the left in front of the inner sanctuary, the gold floral work and lamps and tongues, the pure gold basins, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, dishes, and censers, and the gold sockets for the doors of the innermost room, the most holy place, and also for the doors of the main hall of the temple. When all the work King Solomon had done for the temple of the Lord was finished, he brought in things his father David had dedicated, the silver and gold and the furnishings, and he placed them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. Okay, so that's chapter 7. Now we have an idea of what all of this looks like. And in my opinion, it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. It's interesting how, we place value on things, right? Like this camera, the cameras that I'm using, the mic that I'm using, the computer, we've placed a value on those. We know the weight, right? The house that I currently live in, there's a value on that. Did you notice that no value was placed on anything? They didn't even mention the weight. Let me look y'all in your eyes. They did not even mention the weight, guys. That's chapter 7. We're now at 50 minutes. So I'm going to end this recording. I'm going to end the stream. And then I'm going to start up again. We're going to start off at chapter 8. 1 Kings chapter 8. Right? But this was interesting. My takeaway from this is just... And again, I like to compare things to how we see it now. And it's just jaw-dropping how amazing this place was. I would have loved to be able to be alive then. I mean, actually not really. If you know the way things transpired since then, not really. But just for the temple's purpose, right? Just to be able to see this place, I would have loved to be able to see it. It sounds like such an amazing place. Wow. And if this was amazing, you could imagine how amazing heaven would be. They had, the walls were gold. Imagine walking on gold streets. That goes to show you the things that we place value on, it does not matter. It does not matter. It's just stone. It's just elements. It does not matter, truthfully. If you walking on gold, do you think that really matters? Let's think about that. The temple had walls of gold. I know it was clean in here, but let's say I decide to put gold on my walls and gold on my floor. Do you think that means something to me? If I'm walking from outside to inside, under my feet, it's dirty, right? Naturally, dirt is going to accumulate on the floor and I will have to clean it. Do you think that means something? It doesn't. So these things don't matter when you view it in a heavenly, religious context. They shouldn't matter. But, as humans, we put value on it. Anyway, so 52 minutes. I'm going to end this stream, end this recording, and start off again. And then the next one, we will be continuing from 1 Kings chapter 8, and we will be talking about how the ark was brought to the temple. That's going to be interesting because I already know what's going to happen. You guys will find out. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you guys for spending this Sabbath day with me as I go through the Word of God. I hope that you guys are having a blessed day, and I hope that you'll continue to receive blessings from this. And I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. All right. Peace out, guys.